episode 150 of Treaty Talk with myself, Jack Neville, and Matt Callan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star. Another bumper weekend of action to look back on. Limerick are into an All-Ireland final. Peter Casey's red card was thankfully rescinded. We've ladies football to look forward to, and obviously the Munster minor final on Wednesday to look back on. So do stay tuned.
The impression of the game you get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the Red Brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
As usual, the entrance gets you going, Matt. But
it does. I just love to hear what that man's take on Peter Casey would be.
Of course, I'd say some will be listening to your opinion on it. But just on that, we got brilliant news last night. This was late enough in the evening. I was just sitting back watching Love Island after training, and just popped up on the phone that Peter Casey was free to play. And as always, everyone, you're more than welcome to get your comments in, and myself and Matt will go through them. But Matt, justice was done is the main idea from that Peter Casey will be allowed to play in the All-Ireland final.
Absolutely, Jack. No question at all about it. In the heat of the moment and in real time, you would find it very, very difficult to form a very definite opinion about it. But there's one opinion that you would form immediately. Would be that it would be anything, and the referee indicated that he was going to send him off for an alleged headbutt. That any such behaviour would be totally out of character with Peter Casey, as you know, Jack, and we have been watching him long enough, but then on seeing the footage. And seeing the footage of the incident, I don't know from Adam how anybody could construe that Peter Casey was guilty of what he was allegedly charged with. Now, in fairness to the referee to a point, he obviously didn't see, he either hadn't a clear view nor didn't see the incident. Now, he consulted widely, because he first went to his linesman and then he consulted at length with the umpires. And obviously he sought a consensus as to what, as to what occurred. But there was such an element, he consulted for so long, there was such an element of doubt in their minds, unless someone of the officials was absolutely definitive. Then I think Peter Casey should definitely, at first instance, should have got the benefit of the doubt. But look, all's well that ends well. It's fantastic that Peter is back, but more so, it is fantastic that Peter's name is cleared in this case. Peter is one of the people. Like we pay exorbitant prices to go in to watch matches, but he's one of the reasons we don't mind paying it. He's an absolutely hurling artist. He's a sportsman to his fingertips. Like, I've been watching Peter Casey right up through the ranks at club and county level, and like, is there any accusation of anything untoward, unsportsman, like that can be levelled at Peter Casey? There isn't. I have never seen anything but sportsmanship out of him, and I'm absolutely delighted. It's a huge boost, Jack. it's a huge boost to Limerick, a massive boost to Limerick. But like, who wants an All-Ireland final without one of the best players in the country? Like, we want to see the best players in the country grace our showcase there, and thank God that Peter Casey is going to be there.
Yeah, thank God Peter Casey is going to there. And just like, it was pretty inconclusive. There was one angle that looked terrible, and then there was another angle that made it look very innocent altogether. So when it's inconclusive and you don't have real proof, and just looking at Peter there afterwards, he probably knows himself that he probably shouldn't got involved, but that he did nothing really wrong. And I think, Matt, it should come into, your character should come into question if it's not really like clear cut that you should be sent off. And thank God Peter Casey's undoubted reputation as a very clean and brilliant hurler has come to the fruition here.
You're absolutely right, Jack. And there was a camera shot of Peter Casey subsequent to him being sent off, sitting in the stand, and he certainly didn't have the face of somebody that was guilty of anything. And but you know, I can't understand quite a number of people in public, for whatever reason, Jack, were prepared to go out and incriminate Peter Casey. I think that is shameful, because we all know it's not just us in Limerick. The whole country knows the record of Peter Casey and the impeccable record that he has as a sportsman. And like, certainly until it was tested and disposed of, people should have reserved judgment. And I'm viewing the footage. I don't know now. A number of people that viewed the footage, I don't know from God how anybody could construe that anything was untoward. You know, I find that disappointing that people were prepared to incriminate Peter Casey. A certain element, of course, but of course the vast majority of people, notwithstanding a Limerick bias or anything, but talking to people, not just from Limerick but outside Limerick, couldn't see any logic at all as to why he was sent off, and that's from the footage that they saw in the Sunday game.
Yeah, but anyways, justice and common sense have prevailed. Peter Casey will surely start his first All-Ireland final next Sunday. Just a few of the comments there. Thanks, keep them coming in. Rosie Hartnett, thank God for that, about Peter Casey. She's delighted for Peter and all the lads. Great that he was proven innocent. Come on, Limerick. Antonio Colpa says, great news. The Shelminator is back. Go on, Casey boy, get men the match now. Next time out. And Sean Tierney makes a good point. If he's a good game in the final, he will get an All-Star this year. And just, I suppose, more on the game itself and the team and the performance from Limerick. Like, Peter Casey is definitely in the reckoning for an All-Star. He will be there in the final. But that inside forward line, I kind of want to touch on Seamus Flanagan as well. Flanagan, Casey and Gillane were pretty much unmarkable against Waterford.
Yeah, they were really on top of their game. Of course, and Gillane really had a point to prove, as if he had a point to prove, I suppose. But you know, having sat out the first half of the Munster final and coming on and making such an impact, he certainly has driven on. But as for the other two, they're absolutely on fire all year. Seamus Flanagan has had an absolutely fantastic. He's actually, Seamus Flanagan has had a fantastic 2 years. If you look at Seamus Flanagan's career, he really hit the ground running 2018, and I suppose he would be forced to admit himself a small bit of a dip in form in 2019, but come 2020. And again this year, absolutely on fire. Super fit, super athlete, great to take his scores. He has scored 1-9 in the championship so far, all from play, which is a fantastic return from a full forward. We're going back to the days of Joe McKenna for that type of a return from a full forward, from a Limerick full forward. And look, we know what Peter Casey brings to it. Like Peter Casey, the work rate that Peter Casey puts in, we see his scores, but the amount of work he puts in, he's all over the place. He's a pure nuisance for any defender to watch. to mark. But you're right. The full forward line. I think they led Waterford a merry dance. Now I was quite expecting that, we were going to have a tighter situation this year, in that Waterford would have learned from the All-Ireland final last year. But Jack, I made a judgment on Waterford the day that we were in the down in Walsh Park for the league game, and I really felt that they were not in a good place. All right, now they beat Galway, they've beaten Galway 11 times out of 12 in the championship, so that comes down to routine probably. They went on then and beat Tipperary. It's a Tipperary team that, I was expecting an awful lot more. I was expecting a final kick from the elder statesman of the team, and we saw that one of the first of them went this week in Brendan Maher, and it's only fair that we should say, as hurling men, that Brendan Maher was one of the great hurlers of this generation. Yeah. No doubt at all about it, but for club and for his county, and was like Peter Casey, a great sportsman, absolutely. And sad to see him going, but obviously he saw the writing on the wall, and you just wonder, is it the start of an exodus in Tipperary? But Waterford failed to convince me, Jack. And they certainly, but having said that, I was pretty sure going to Croke Park last Saturday that that there was no way there was going to be 11 points in it, that they would have closed the gap somewhat. But lo and behold, I think an 11 points defeat certainly doesn't flatter Limerick. I think it flatters Waterford more.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't flatter Limerick. And I suppose the game was probably summed up in the first 15 minutes. And to be fair to Waterford, I don't think any team should be playing 4 weeks in a row, and we mentioned that. But that's what the case was. But Waterford gave their all in the first 15 minutes. Stephen Bennett knocked over Barry Nash, and he knocked over Hegarty as well. There was Gerard Burns was put to ground. 3 big men put down, and still the scoreline was 4-3 in Limerick's favour, and it kind of felt as though Waterford had given their all and Limerick just absorbed it. And then the second quarter, did they outscore them 11-3 or 4 or something like that? The writing was on the wall very early in that game, that Limerick are just too powerful for Waterford.
Yeah, but Jack, that's where Waterford got it tactically wrong. You're going into your fourth game. Tactically, you need to have something in the tank going in the home straight if you have serious ambitions about winning it. And it was a question, energy-wise, of putting all your eggs in the one basket into the first quarter. And not because they're Limerick. Let's forget about our green boys and all this sort of stuff. You were taking on the most physically powerful side in the country, possibly the most physical, powerful side that we have seen for many a day in the game. Huge men. And you're taking those on and going toe to toe with him, going physically with him. Jack, I think it was all wrong.
Yeah, I think Liam Cahill had to try something. It didn't really work. The running game in Croke Park last year in December, it didn't work again. But I still think there is potential in this Waterford side that they could upset a team and could possibly be the second best team in Ireland. But I think Limerick have their number and have had for some time. But one player that really stood out for me, Matt, and he probably hasn't got the plaudits he deserves. And last year, 14 Limerick men were nominated for All-Stars, and 1 man from the starting team was left out, and that man was Dara Donovan. And I was high in the Hogan stand, or the Cusack stand, on Saturday, and to watch this man's performance, and you can see the picture here. There's 3 men around him, but they can't get near to him. Dara Donovan, a performance for the age as last weekend in Croke Park.
Yeah, a top performance by Dara Donovan. Absolutely delighted for him, but he has been monotonously consistent. He goes about his work, match after match after match, never dips below a certain level. And you must remember, he's made a huge contribution to Limerick's march to the final. The goal he got, he has a goal got in the championship. He has his performance. You know, it's the sign of a great player. Like you go on to the big stage when the stakes are high, and All Ireland semi-final day, they don't come and much bigger. Only one comes bigger. And certainly losers on All Ireland semi-final day are quickly forgotten. But by God, Dara turned in a performance for the ages. But he's one of these guys, you know, that goes under the radar.
Yeah.
He works hard, goes about his business, does whatever he's asked to do, play whatever role he's asked to do, and does it to the best of his ability. Now, I thought he was, when he was coming up back in 2013 and 2014, and I'm on record of writing it and saying it, that I honestly thought that he was a real senior hurling midfielder for the future, certainly that has been borne out. Like, to a certain degree, Dara O'Donovan's performance on last Saturday didn't surprise me in the slightest, Jack. It was that he went up to an unbelievable level last Saturday, and I'm absolutely delighted for him. And to get the Man of the Match award was very, very, very fitting. And you know, like, you know, he was left out of 14 last year, and you know, I'm not for arguing that people should be shortlisted or nominated if they weren't good enough. But it was very, very hard to see how Dara O'Donovan wasn't good enough to be nominated with the rest of them last year.
Yeah, and we'll touch on All-Stars. I just want to get your opinion on All-Stars before the final game later on in the podcast. So stay tuned for that. But you mentioned there, Dara, his work goes under the radar, and like Nicky Quaid's work goes under the radar. And I know me and you champion him every single week, but again, Nicky Quaid in Crow Park, like, impenetrable. Like, you never ever felt in danger, even when Jamie Byrne was 5 yards away from him. Austin Gleeson had a shot. Like, two of the purest strikers in the Waterford team, and Nicky Quaid just stands up strong and goes about his business, and there's never a fuss made over it. But it's incredible goalkeeping we're seeing every week from Nicky.
Well, I was asked in Croke Park last week, no, will I ever stop talking about Nicky Quaid? And the answer is no, because there is so much to be said about Nicky Quaid and about his achievements on and off the field. Oh, sure, look, Jack. At the risk of being repetitive and saying what we've said, you know, what a player, but what an individual, you know, absolutely. You know, he's symptomatic of why this group is so successful that it is. And I've said it a number of times, and I've said it to Nicky himself. I would regard Nicky as one of the best outfield players we never had playing for Limerick.
Yeah.
Like, see what he has achieved outfield when playing with Effin. Absolutely fantastic midfielder. Like, took him to an All Ireland semi-final, playing at centre back way back in 2012, intermediate semi-final, All Ireland clubs. You know, this guy, there is no end. I'm not, look, anything Nicky Quaid does doesn't surprise me anymore. You know, the ball he pulled down from under the crossbar, the save.
I have it there.
Jamie, you have, absolutely. The save from Jamie Byrne, and there's no doubt whatsoever about it. It was not over the bar. You know, Nicky just keeps, excuse the pun, he keeps moving the goalposts in terms of performance year on year. It just simply incredible. And for that person that said it to me, I have no plans whatsoever to stop talking about Nicky Quaid anytime in the near future.
Yeah, and even just, I think this photo sums it up, man. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but the people at home will be able to watch it. It's the one he catches over the crossbar. And
yeah,
like,
that's the one I'm talking about. And like they say, was it over the bar or was it over the bar or this, that, or the other thing? It certainly wasn't over the bar.
But like, even looking at the photo now, like, he can't see that ball. There is no way Nicky Quaid's eyes are on that ball. It just, I don't know, the natural instinct that he has for a goalie, like, is incredible to be able to catch the ball over the bar, and you can't even see it. But I suppose that's that's Nicky Quaid, and every day he does
Yeah,
something
but
new.
you see, we give him we give him credit. You see, and rightly so. And you can't give him enough of it for being a goalkeeper, shot stopper. But like his reading of the game and the way he's able to help the defenders in front of him, that goes unseen. Like plus the fact that the confidence he instills on those outside him. To think that, you know, if all comes to all, sure, Nicky is there anyway, you know, that they have Nicky Quaid behind him. You know, you possibly can take liberties that you otherwise mightn't take, may not take in defence. You know, just a fantastic, absolutely fantastic. You know, thank God he's from Limerick.
Yeah, Hennessy in the comments says Nicky, as always, outstanding. David Richards said he's glad to have Peter Casey back. Sean Tiernig talking about Darragh Donovan. He was class work rate unbelievable, but even outside that, he's sweet of skills from Darragh and from all the Limerick team. Hennessy also says that Seamus Flanagan is on fire, and just probably to finish up with the red card. I don't know if we can see it all here, but essentially Liam Gordon, who was the linesman of the day, saw the incident, informed the referee to award a yellow card to both Casey and Gleeson. The referee asked the umpire, and he said to give a red card. So at the end of the day, justice is done. Moving on from the red card and the game, well, not even the game itself, Limerick are obviously into a second Munster or All-Ireland final in a row, third in 4 years. What improvements can they make from the Waterford game, if any, Matt?
I suppose at the face of it, you'd say, what improvements can you make if you win an All-Ireland semi-final pulling up? But I still think that we haven't seen the full potential of Limerick yet. You know, we haven't seen the type of we haven't seen the level of free flow and power play that we saw in the All-Ireland final last year. I think they still have to recapture that level. But you know, all right, notwithstanding the second half against Tipperary, when they really hit an all-time high because they had to. But what's so hugely important, and John Kiley touched on it in his briefing during the week about how happy, pleased he was with the improvement. There was game on game, and he could see the improvement and blah blah blah. But I really think that the serious incremental improvement has manifested in the championship. The performance, notwithstanding the first half against Tipperary, in general, was much better than that against Cork. And like we saw the performance last Saturday, which was up a notch again. Plus the fact that it was a performance over 70 minutes as distinct from 35. So there is another notch to go. I honestly believe to get back to the rhythm and the fluency that we saw in the All-Ireland final last year. And like we've said it a couple of times in this cast, I have been believing, and nobody has told me, but I have been believing myself all the time, that right from the outset, John Kiley and his management team targeted 4 games. We're 3/4 way through. No, there's only one game. There's only one game to go. The roadmap was set out for him, and like Jack. Generally, teams can only peak once in a year, and it's all about peaking at the right time. And we saw the timing of it in 2018. You know, two huge challenges: Cork in the semi-final, Galway in the final, and this year Waterford and Cork. And last year again, of course, twas Galway in the semi-final, and we really didn't know what to expect from Waterford in the final, other than that they would throw everything at it. But I think timing your peak is absolutely essential. And given the incremental improvement that we have seen from game to game, I think there will be another notch up on Sunday week, and let's hope we'll see where it takes them.
Yeah, and just to bridge away from your point there for a second, I think Sinead Connick made a fantastic point there about Nicky Quaid. any team, hurling, soccer, football, whatever, you need to have a confidence in their goalie, and it makes the team's job is a whole lot easier when you have that kind of goalie. And with Nicky Quaid, they don't get much better than him. And we'll leave that for the Nicky Quaid talk for the day. You think?
Yeah, well, I agree totally with Sinead, and she's making the point that she's adding to the point that we made about defenders. That they have extra confidence when they're playing in front of a fella like Nicky Quaid.
Yeah, and moving on from the Limerick game, before we go to the Cork game, had you any issues with hay bales on the way up to Dublin?
No. Unless they put them on the train track, I wouldn't have issues with them, Jack.
Oh, you went by the train. Yeah, we drove up. We left home we left the Skeeton at about 11 o'clock, and a few of the lads didn't leave till it was closer to, I'd say, about 11:30 or 11:45. And we were up in the Lewis at about 1:30, and they arrived in the Croke Park at 5:30. So small margins, but thankfully everyone there.
I can see the reason for it now. I can see the reason for delaying the game. That there would be a public safety issue in it, but certainly Darragh O'Donovan in his acceptance speech of the Man of the Match award made a point about it, and there is more than an element of validity in the point that Darragh made. All right, public safety, absolutely hugely important, and I suppose we're probably more conscious of it now than ever before with the COVID outbreak and all this sort of thing. But I'm not so sure about the wisdom of it. As a principle, I'm not so sure about it. Now, if there were crowd congestion or something outside the ground, maybe, but. I'm not convinced of it, Jack, that it was the right decision. On public safety, probably yes, but and it would be a pity that people that were trying to get to the game couldn't get to see all the game. Yeah. But I suppose the secret is, Jack, go on time.
Yeah, that is the thing. And look, you'd hate, like, you can see it from both sides. Like, Darragh obviously is a fine-tuned athlete, and with Paul Kinnerk there, they'll have everything down to the minute, down to the second, nearly. So to push back a half an hour, it just adds in delay. But at the same token, you don't want anyone missing a game, because I know for my friends, they left at 12. That was 5 hours before the game. Like, even with heavy traffic, you'd be there in 3.5, like, max. So, like, I can see where both sides came from. But look, everyone saw the game. Limerick won. It couldn't have gone much better for Limerick. The following day, then, we had a real classic between Cork and Kilkenny, and no one could really call it beforehand. But just from Cork, what did you make from Cork? They threw away that 6-point lead like they did against us in 2018, but this time they had the composure to regain it in, and Cork were the deserving winners at the end of the
day. There was no doubt at all about that, Jack. They were deserving winners, and they were deserving winners in normal time, I would have said. That it raises a question about them, how they conspired to get themselves into a situation where they had to play extra time. But I think the most heartening thing from a Cork point of view on this occasion was the way the players, having thrown away the lead, and having had one foot in the final, and then to have it dramatically taken away from them, there was, I suppose, there was doubts. Although strange to say, I would have had no doubts about their fitness level or their in coping with the extra time. But, like, would there have been a mental block there? Because a lot of those players were around in 2018 when something similar happened, and we know how easily they were turned over. Yeah, would there have been a mental block? Like, Jack, they were on the threshold of winning the hurling match. Like, it was a last gasp goal, like, that had deprived them of a place in the All-Ireland final. So I think Cork will be very, very pleased, and we're looking at a team that has improved dramatically since the opening round. and will be totally, and I don't want to preempt anything that we might be talking about next week, preempt, and that will be a totally different kettle of fish. Like Cork have got their mojo back, and they've got We're Cork attitude back, and like they will be a different kettle of fish.
Oh, definitely. And look, we won't talk about it much, and probably won't even talk any more about it today, to be honest. But like I said at the start of the year, and when we spoke about when the draw was made, that I really think that Cork are a bogey team for Limerick and have been for the last few years. And not to say Limerick lose every time or anything like that, but just they seem to they have a way of playing against Limerick. And this year in the Munster semi-final, Limerick shut that down pretty quickly. But someone mentioned in the podcast last week, if that penalty goes in, like if we're not relying on Nicky Quaid to stop one of the greatest strikers of all time and Patrick Horgan scoring a penalty, like Cork are 9 points ahead midway through the first half. Now we saw against Tip that Limerick have the ability to come back, but just a word on Cork, and they're growing as a bogey team for Limerick, really.
They are, and you see, Cork would never short the forwards. During the ban spell, and like 16 years without an All-Ireland, Cork is a lifetime. And it's nearly a crime, down there. But they had serious defensive issues for the last number of years, well documented. But they seem to have rectified that. Robert Downey seems to be settling in very well at full back. But what? How will he match up to the Seamus Flanagan test? That's going to be that'll be one of the deciding battles in the All Ireland final. Mark Coleman has settled in at centre back, so they have the spine resolved, and I think Timmy O'Mahony is playing out of his skin. In what is probably his best position, which we thought at the beginning of this championship when we discussed it, and John Millerick has moved in very, very nicely to form a very good half back line, and two cornerbacks, Niall O'Leary and Sean O'Donoghue are playing very well, and of course Cork have options off the bench in defence as well now, in that Colm Spillane is sitting on the bench and Sean O'Leary Hayes is sitting on the bench. These are players that would be they'd be regular starters in other counties, like to have somebody like Colm Spillane, and it's a different Cork that we saw in 2018 when they had to bring Seamus Hannity back into the game during the extra time. Cork have real options there. They have real options in defence as well. And of course, we know the options they have in attack. They have depending on which one of them will start, either Shane Barrett or Alan Cadigan. One of them is going to be on the bench. Like Declan Dalton is back after injury. So the Cork have plenty of options now. So and they have a much stronger bench, and it'll be a much better Cork team than we played in the Munster semi-final, and it will certainly, I think, be a more potent Cork team than we played in the All-Ireland semi-final of 2018.
Yeah, and look, as you mentioned, that kind of Cork confidence that they kind of build on it. But we'll move on from that game because we'll have a full preview next week. But before we move on from the hurling, I just put up my hurling all-stars so far this year yesterday, and you can find that on Sporting Limerick's website. But I just want to talk through, man, and see if you will pick any flaws with it. So in goals, obviously, it's Nicky Quaid, and I'm sure you'll have no qualms with that one. Then in the full-back line, I went for Sean Finn, going for 4 in a row. I can't see anyone stopping him. I plucked for Robert Downey at full-back. I just think he's really made it his own the last weeks. I thought Conor Prunty was excellent as well, but I'd go for Downey. He's another game. I did make the caveat that if Dan Morrissey had started more than one game this year, that he'd be well within a shout, and who's to say a big final won't pull it for him. And Niall O'Leary. So that was my full back line.
I wouldn't be 100% sure of Robert Downey. He certainly is a contender. I would have him as a contender definitely at this point. But a lot, as you know, A lot in deciding the All-Stars rests on a performance in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah,
And the test with Flanagan will be it'll be a different type of test than what he has been exposed to so far. So that will be the test. There is no doubt at all he is evolving into being a fine fullback, but you know, definitely Dan Morrissey on the performance in the All-Ireland semi-final, were he to turn out something similar, and there's no reason to believe he won't in the All-Ireland final, he certainly be a very, very, very strong contender.
Yeah.
Now,
You mentioned there. Go on.
Niall O'Leary, there's this Rory Hayes from Clare as well would be a contender possibly for the full back line. And we can't forget Hugh Lawler at Kilkenny either in the full back line.
Yeah, I have them all. I have, like, in the post itself. I mentioned a few. I said Barry Nash, Rory Hayes, Paddy Deegan, Hugh Lawler all deserve the shout. So, like, for anyone that wants an in-depth of it, it's there as well. But go on, Matt.
Yeah, you know, I think Hugh Lawler could possibly come into the reckoning, but he has the disadvantage at this stage of having his campaign finished, whilst we'll say other contenders like Robert Downey and Dan Morrissey have opportunities to strengthen their claims. Like, Paddy Nash has had a fantastic year. Has had a fantastic year. Now, he went off injured against Waterford. That's a huge boost to Limerick as well, that injury is put behind him. Yeah. And that it has been put behind him so soon that he's able to participate in the full preparation for the All-Ireland final. You know, that's a boost as well. And he's been absolutely immense this year. Barry Nash is certainly a contender.
Yeah,
you'll have Rory Hayes there. After that, it's personally, I can't see Conor Prunty getting the number 3.
Yeah,
you know, I don't disagree too much with you, but I don't agree with you, Jack.
Yeah, I suppose.
How does that sound?
Moving into half-back line, and you mentioned the importance of the final, and my half-back line is full of players in the All-Ireland final as well. So I've Tim Manny at half-back, Diarmaid Byrne centre-back, and Kyle Hayes wing-back. I don't think you can make any claims otherwise to them 3.
I thought who did a fantastic year is Callum Lyons.
Yeah, but I just think I don't think you can leave out any of those 3. You do, obviously. You might as well say it though.
Yeah, well, you a straight battle. I don't know why we overlook Declan Hannon in these type of situations.
It's probably just goes unnoticed that it's so it's probably like the Nicky Quaid thing that for so long overlooked.
Yeah, like some of the things he did last Saturday, in my opinion, were off the top shelf.
Yeah, if I was to pick a team and I wanted a centre back, it would be Declan Hannon all day. But I suppose in the purpose of these teams, where there's 3 halfbacks there, they're probably allowed to shine a bit more. But if I was picking a starting 15 from scratch, I would have Declan Hannon at 6 every day of the week.
Yeah, I would too, certainly. Yeah, Tim O'Mahony, Diarmaid Burns, yeah, Kyle Hayes. Really hard to argue with you, Jack, but I think Callum Lyons will come into the reckoning. I think Declan Hannon will come into the reckoning. Again, there's the caveat of the All-Ireland final. No, you're forgetting about Mark Coleman.
Yeah, I have these players mentioned, but I just went for my top 3. But a lot of it will come down to the final, and it's all just guesswork.
Padraig Walsh at Kilkenny.
Yeah. I have him as well. It all comes down to the final, but just a bit of fun to ease us out of it a small bit. But I know what you mean. But moving on from that line, because there is so many players. In midfield, I went for 2 that aren't in the final, and I think they'll only be placeholders until the final is over. I went for Jamie Byrne and Cathal Malone. I think both of them deserve to have their name up there for stellar seasons for their teams. But I think William O'Donoghue and Dara Donovan or Conor Cahalane or Luke Meade, I think 2 of them will probably come in and take over by the time the final whistle goes next Sunday.
Well, I would look at Dara Fitzgibbon as being a certain for midfield.
I thought he hasn't been as good this year. Like I know what he can do, and I think Conor Cahalane probably plays midfield a lot for Cork. I do, on talent alone.
I would go with him. It would be one of the Limerick duo I would go with, because they've been remarkably consistent for the reasons in which we said. But certainly, I would be putting Dara Fitzgibbon as a banker for midfield.
We'll have a difference there. So
but apart from being a huge admirer of the way he plays the game, he's a fantastic influencer. Like, and he's really the heartbeat of that Cork team. When things begin to flag, it's the energy of Dara Fitzgibbon more often than not revives it, Jack. Yeah. I'm not so sure about Jamie Barron. Like Jamie Barron was he didn't have a great game against Limerick last week.
No, I have that caveat in there that anytime he comes up against William O'Donoghue, he seems to come out second best, and that would probably tip me towards Will at the end of the All-Ireland.
Yeah, like William O'Donoghue now and Dara O'Donovan, like I think could be battling for one place with Dara Fitzgibbon there. Like we haven't spoken about Tipperary at all, and have any players there from Tipperary, but I suppose so far you really any of them will hardly be in contention.
No, the only player that I mentioned in the whole thing was Jason Ford for a wing forward spot, and I didn't even pick him, but I thought Jason was good. Absolutely.
Dan McCormick had a very good year as well.
Yeah, he did.
But it's certainly Jason Ford, very, very, very hard to overlook him. But look, I'm jumping the gun now. What's your half forward line, Jack?
What would you have your half forward line? I'll let you go first.
Well, you have an advantage over me in that I have no thought put into it whatsoever.
I'll give you mine. So I went
in that you sprung this upon me,
Well, I know, but you're ever the professional. You just fall into these things easily. There's no preparation needed for you, Matt. But I went for Tony Kelly, Keane Lynch, and Tom Morrissey. So two out of last year's trio, and then Tony Kelly.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with it.
Yeah, there's nothing to say that a big final from Gerard Hegarty, who seems to be just catching a bit of fire. But Tom Morrissey just 16 points in his last 3 games in Croke Park.
Yeah, but you see, we spoke about Tom. He was taken off against Cork. And what has been Tom's response? The very same as it was after the Munster final last year. 6 points and 5 points. And, practically under the radar, but against Tipperary in the Munster final, Tom's scores came at crucial stages.
Yeah,
they came at stages when we needed to be kept in the game, and they came at stages when we needed to close out the game. Tom is a big occasion player, and he can rise to it. And all right, things didn't go his way against Cork the first day, but that can happen any player. But Tom's consistency is absolutely remarkable, and you're absolutely right. He obviously loves Croke Park. It's his stage, and what he's got 11 points in the championship in 2 games.
Yeah,
10 from play and 1 from a free. That's Tom's statistics.
He's just.
I'll take it all day from a wing forward, Jack.
You will, and I made the point there that he's looking to join Dan on 2 All-Stars, but there's nothing to say Dan won't have 3, but the Morrissey household are going to need a new room for all these All-Star awards that their children are coming up with.
They'll need a new shelf anyway,
Yeah, but there's run out of room on a shelf already. And then into the full forward line, I suppose looking at it now, I probably have I've already changed my mind, but I went for Jack O'Connor anyway in the corner, 100% guaranteed. Seamus Flanagan at full forward. I can't say anything other than that. And I went for Austin Gleeson, the other corner. I think Patrick Horgan probably has a lot to say with that, and Peter Casey. I don't think Austin will be there by the end of it, but I don't think you can argue with Seamus Flanagan and Jack O'Connor.
No, Jack O'Connor, there's only one word comes to mind when I think of Jack O'Connor, and that's sensational. His speed. As a hurler, to a certain degree, he's unorthodox, and I suppose that helps him. And like his finishing prowess and his appreciation of the game. You can have speedsters that run all over the place and run into corners, but Jack O'Connor is somebody that's running with purpose, and he's been the find of the year. And I'd say Jack O'Connor, would he be young enough to be nominated for Young Hurler of the Year?
I think the Young Hurler of the Year now is just under 20s. So
under 20, yeah, because he certainly would be right up there with that, and I would certainly be giving him certainly giving him one of the corner forward positions. Very, very hard to see anybody ousting Seamus Flanagan.
No, can't see it.
Even at this stage, where things not even go right for him in the All Ireland final. It'll take a superb performance from somebody like Horgan, or Gleeson doesn't have the opportunity anymore. He's out of the race. But we have no Waterford player in it. And if we're to crystal ball what might be the selection, it's very, very hard to see a beaten semi-finalist. Now, you've Jamie Barron in it. I haven't.
I have two Clare players in mine as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I don't agree. I don't disagree totally with you. Going back now, I meant to say it there a minute ago. I don't disagree entirely with you about Cathal Malone now.
Yeah,
I think he's been very good, and I think Young Hayes has been very good at the back.
Yeah, I think just with the way things are gone, and you only have 4 fixtures, it's very hard if you've only played 2 of them, or even 3 to some extent, that you can get a award. Like, it just. Like, if all the Limerick players and Cork players show up in the final, you could really see 12 or 13 of them named on the team.
Yeah, look, it's all about exposure, Jack. Now, Adrian Mullen, we haven't spoken about him. We haven't spoken about TJ Reid.
TJ, yeah.
Can there be a case made for Owen Cody?
Yeah, I put him in after Jack O'Connor, but I can't see Jack O'Connor not getting it. So I cannot
see Jack O'Connor not getting it unless the world falls down around him in the final, which is unlikely. He seems to have the mentality for the big day.
We'll see. I was only just interested to see your opinion there, Matt. As you said, a big All-Ireland final will change everything for all those players.
But don't forget Peter the Great, Casey.
He has his chance to shine now. That was just my All-Star team, and Matt critically analysed it. James Coughlin here says Keane Lynch is the most outstanding player in the country for me this year. I'd have to go along with that, and then I'd probably have Sean Finn and Kyle Hayes making up the top 3, but that's definitely for another day, Matt. We spent enough time talking about hurling today.
I disagree with him. The most outstanding player in the year this year, the most outstanding player in the country for the last 4 years, I'd say.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Keane Lynch.
I was wondering, very rarely, if ever, has taken a back step or anything like that. Keane Lynch has just been outstanding, but so has the whole Limerick team, thankfully. We'll move on from the hurling, Matt, because we've spent nearly an hour at this stage. We could talk about hurling all day, but there was disappointment to Cork during the week. The Munster minor football final, Limerick went in as underdogs, but at the water break, it's 1-8-12 in favour of Limerick, and Kevin Dinahan's men are I suppose they are at this stage, are dreaming of a first Munster football title since 1956. I suppose they probably ran out a bit of steam, a bit of pressure comes on towards the end, but it was a brilliant performance from Limerick, and one to take great heart from, if anything.
Absolutely, Jack. I rarely left a Limerick match after being beaten so proud. I don't think ever did I of the performance of the Limerick team, and full credit to Kevin Dinahan and his backroom team. They had their team meticulously prepared. I haven't seen a Limerick team at underage level as well prepared as they had everything in place for them. And you know, coming into this game, Jack, it needs to be said, they had to be ranked outsiders. This was a Cork team of all the talents. They set a record in the first round of the championship when they beat Waterford by 40 points. They carried it on in the semi-final when they inflicted a first defeat in the province in Kerry in 9 years. Kerry were going for 9 in a row. They scored a goal and a point in the first 3 minutes against Limerick. But Kevin Deenahan's men came back. It'll tell you about the character. To lead by 12 points to 1-8 and by 13 points to 1-9 with 8 minutes remaining. It was absolutely phenomenal. Those players that were sent out there for Limerick last Saturday or last Wednesday evening, they left everything in Simple Stadium. Absolutely fantastic, an absolutely fantastic performance by a Limerick team. Like, you know, any team with a team facing a team with the pedigree that Cork had coming into it, and to fall 4 points behind inside 3 minutes, they would have died. Any team from any county would have died. But there was something special about this team. And there obviously is something special about this group of players. Kevin Deenan and his backroom team have been with these players, and we have flagged it back in 2019 as under 15s when they took over 40 players up to Abbottstown for the Dermot Early All-Ireland tournament and won both the A and the B competitions, the Dermot Early Cup and the Dermot Early Plate, which was phenomenal. Now, the nucleus of those two teams formed the minor team that we saw last Wednesday night. Plus a good few additions. Kevin Deenan told us quite a good few additions. But this, in my opinion, you know, full credit to the lads for the way they had prepared them. Full credit to the lads for the way they performed on the field. But this is the first tangible dividend and evidence that the academy system in football is beginning to pay dividends. It's the first dividend of the academy system. And Limerick they were beaten by 7 points in the finish. It is a total distortion and a total flattery for Cork that they won by 7 points. They just got that run in Limerick. Limerick's gas had gone low. They'd given it everything for 50 odd minutes. And Cork they had that extra bit of power and that extra bit of power to come off the bench and see out the game. And of course the bit of tradition as well, you know. But full credit. I could not speak highly enough of what I saw on Wednesday night. As I say, I don't think I ever left a game after Limerick being beaten as proud to be a Limerick person.
Yeah, it was a brilliant performance, and the word you use is pride, and like you couldn't help but have pride for them young lads that have done themselves, their families, their team so proud. And I was talking to Kevin on Tuesday, and just the way he speaks, he exuberates confidence in a kind of, and not in a really out there way. It's just very quietly confident, very sure in what he does. And like he spoke after the game, he was talking to John Keogh afterwards, and he said, we said to them, this can't be a once off. We've got to kick on here. 3 boys are underage again next year. They have to be our leaders next year. We got to kick on, get back here again. Who's to say this can't happen on a regular basis? And like straight after a defeat like that, Matt, where you're so close to getting that breakthrough win, it's taken away from you by a good Cork side, but you have the composure to get back in that frame of mind that this is just the first step on a journey. This isn't the end of the journey. This is only the start of the journey.
Yeah, but that is because Kevin Deenan has a vision as to where it should be going. You know, and it's buying into that. He's seeing the bigger picture and probably seeing the greater plan, and he's prepared to buy into it. And he's probably, you know, this is a stage in the development, which I asked him the question from 2015. or from 2019, and he probably will see that 2019 what they achieved, like it was an achievement what they achieved, Jack.
Hmm.
They lost the Munster final. First of all, it was an achievement to get there, and they won two games to get there, and they really put it up to Cork. His vision is that this team will go on and develop further and evolve further as a football team, heading up for the under 20 grade. So absolutely, his remarks after the game, they were absolutely excellent. But they were the thoughts of somebody that had a greater vision and has a greater plan, and he's certainly buying into that plan. And of course, everything he said, Jack, was totally right.
Oh, yeah, spot on.
Absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anyone could argue with him.
Yeah, and it was very reminiscent of listening to Billy Lee after games. Just like even if things go wrong on the day, they're so assured of what that vision is and where they want to go, and they know it's not going to be a linear line. Like, it's not going to be straight. There is going to be bumps and troughs in the road, and you just take it as it comes. And look, at the end of the day, as you said, it's an achievement to get to a first Munster final in 23 years. Limerick haven't won one in over 65 years. So just to get there and say, look, we're back, we're at the top table again, and who's to say they won't go on next year?
Yeah. There's three of the players underage again next year, which is more than they had this year. They had only two coming over from last year. Carl Murray, who was Dara Murray, who was the captain at midfield, and Cathal O'Mahony, who unfortunately only played part of the game against Clare due to injury. He was a loss on Wednesday night. But there are three players, one from one of the starting 15, one of the subs, and one of the extended panel, who are eligible again next year.
Yeah, and look, they got the semi-final in 2020, a final in 2021. Hopefully 2022 will be the breakthrough year. It's just a pity that we won't see these players in action for their clubs. Obviously, the club championship kicks off this weekend. We'll have a special preview coming later on today, but just they're that bit young. But look, we'll let them enjoy their time with their minor team. No doubt they'll be with 20s next year and their clubs. But well done to Kevin Dennehan. It might have been the desired result. It isn't a Munster victory, but a Munster final is nothing to laugh at, and it's brilliant to see. And again, well done to Kevin Dennehan and his men, and they can enjoy their club championship campaigns with their clubs at under 19 or under 17 level, whatever they may be at. Before we finish off today, Matt, as well, we have ladies football to look forward to. It's been a break since we last saw Donald Ryan's women in action. It probably hasn't been the campaign that they hoped for thus far. Only one win from 3 games that coming against Derry. They lost out to Antrim and Wicklow. But they have a chance now this weekend against Carlow, who are languishing at the bottom of the table. They're previous with Carlow this year. They beat them already. The top 4 go through. A win for Limerick will see them go through. A loss could also see them go through if Derry lose. But Limerick will be wanting to get a win against Carlow, secure their place in knockout stages, and advance with a bit of confidence.
Yeah, I suppose it was a situation that any of us didn't anticipate. When we saw the format of the championship and the structure of the championship, that there were only 5 counties in the junior championship, and that 4 were advancing to the semi-finals. I think we would have been normally pretty confident that we would have nailed the semi-final place before now. But look, it's still in our own hands, insofar as that if we beat Carlow or draw with Carlow, we're there. And you're right about the other scenario. Were we to lose to Carlow, and Derry lose to...
Derry are playing Wicklow.
It would come down to... actually, it could come down to points difference then, isn't that it? Because there'd be three counties on 2 points.
I don't think the 3 can all get to 3 points. they're all in 3 points at the moment. Something there is going to happen.
They can.
Oh, they all draw. Yeah.
If Carlo beat Limerick and Wicklow beat Derry,
it's no. If it has to be, if Derry draw at Wicklow and Limerick and Carlow draw, they'll all be on 4 points. If Limerick lose and Derry lose, then Limerick and Derry will go up on 3 points, and Limerick will go ahead by virtue of head-to-head.
No, because Carlow have no points, and if Carlow win, they'll come up to 3 points.
What I'm looking at here, Carlow have 3 points. They've 1 win. I'm just looking at it. I'm looking at the LGFA website here now. To be honest, now I haven't been tracking the other teams' games.
1 second now. Oh, sorry. My apologies. Carlow, yeah, you're absolutely right. Carlow beat Derry 9 points to 1-5.
Yeah.
That's right. So, yeah. That's the scenario. Like, Limerick lose, Derry lose, Limerick have the head-to-head on Derry. But it's not the way you want to get to the semi-final.
No, it definitely isn't. But one thing is, look, it hasn't been the best start for Limerick, but if you can just see it through and you can get into the knockout stages, it's kind of like a new season then for Donald Ryan's side.
It is, and then like no matter how you get there, it's better to nearly not get there than nearly get there. If you know what my drift is.
Yeah.
And you're right. It takes on a life of its own to a certain degree then, because suddenly it's a one-off. You're into one-off territory. You're into knockout territory. Now, like at the start of the year, Derry were very firm favourites to be the county to miss out. No, we can't take it absolutely as written in stone that Derry are going to lose to Wicklow. Form would suggest that it will happen, but Derry in the first round created a bit of a stir when they defeated Antrim 2 weeks after Antrim had beaten them by 20 points in the Ulster final. Now they've lost by a point to Limerick, and they've lost by a point to Carlow. So, like, there's no question about it. Wicklow or Derry have been very, very, very competitive, and like they're left to ponder on what might have been with those two narrow defeats. So they'll be going all out to redeem themselves against Wicklow. Now on forum, it's very, very hard to see them stopping Wicklow, who will want to consolidate their position at the top of the table, if I'm correct there, Jack.
Mm-hmm.
And because I presume the semi-finals will be 1 against 4, 2 against 3.
Yeah, there's nothing decided, but you'd imagine that's the way they'll go.
That's the way they'll go. So look, it was an arm wrestle when they met in the Gaelic grounds. In the league, there was very, very, very little between them. Limerick prevailed in the end. It's going to be a tough game in Burren Saturday. There's any doubt at all about it. But I think Limerick will just about get over the line and will not be worrying about the result that will be coming in from Derry against Wicklow.
Yeah, and one more thing before we go from that, just a small positive for Donald Ryan is, and it's not a positive to say that the Camogie, they're out, the senior team is out, but that the likes of Roisin Ambrose and Anya Cunningham can focus solely on football, because it's very difficult for the players, not to mind the management team, to have to be juggling like top level sport like that.
It is actually. It is very, 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 very difficult. Like Donald has been juggling there all the year with 4 players that have been involved in Camogie, 2 in junior and 2 in senior. Now the commitments to the senior team for Roisin Ambrose and Anya Cunningham are over, and and we didn't get a chance to discuss it last week, but Jack, they dug out a very, very good win against Offaly to consolidate their position in senior status for 2022, which was it was an excellent result above in Banagher. there 2 weeks ago. So that freed up Anya Cunningham and Roisin Ambrose to concentrate their energies and on the football team. Now, I haven't seen the line out yet. Have you?
No, I haven't. We were on. It could have been up since we came on. I'll just check here now on trusty Twitter.
Because Donald Ryan was sort of using him sparingly, the dual stars. But I'm sure now that he will plunge Roisin Ambrose and Anya Cunningham right into it from the start.
There's no team yet as of yet, so you'll have to continue to speculate. And we haven't been very good with guessing teams so far this year, have we?
No, we haven't. Okay.
But
it's dangerous territory.
It's very dangerous territory. I'm glad Peter Casey is actually, the red card was rescinded, because imagine someone else had to start. We could have got that spectacularly wrong altogether. But for this weekend anyway, Limerick versus Carlow in Burr on Sunday. It doesn't say a time, but I imagine it's 2:00. All those games.
It's 2 o'clock in St. Brendan's Park in Burr.
Yeah, and that game will be shown on the LGFA portal. And just as we bridged into Camogie there, obviously the senior campaign has come to an end, but the juniors are into an All-Ireland quarter-final. They don't know who they'll play yet, but we haven't really been talking about that yet because it's been so far away, and it's been a while since they beat.
They actually may be in a semi-final. We don't know.
I think they were going into the quarter-final talking to someone. I think they were fairly confident. Or maybe they just said our quarter-final, but I thought they said it was quarter-final, but still we don't know who they'll play.
No, it's a minimum of a quarter-final.
Yeah.
The situation is Jack, there are 3 groups. And the top 2 teams in each group go through. Now, the top 3, 2 of the top 3 are drawn and given byes to the semi-finals.
Yeah.
The third team goes into the pot with the 3 second teams, and they play quarterfinals. So if we're one of the 2 drawn, getting a bye, we could possibly go direct to the semi-final.
Yeah, and we'll.
But it's been so long ago since Limerick had a game now that you just wonder, would they be better off to go the quarterfinal route?
Yeah, it seems to suit some teams. I think Pat Ryan's young side will be mad for games considering it's been so long. But they'll go through with Cavan from their group. Roscommon and Clare are through in Group 2, and then Wexford and Armagh are both through. But they play this Saturday, and we'll know the configuration of it then, and we'll be touching on it next week. But that's probably why we haven't been talking about it as much, because it's been a very lengthy delay, and for a season that's been so truncated, it's mad that you got this much of a break. But
well, it's interesting that you should mention Armagh and Wexford. Well, it's Wexford's second team who would normally be playing intermediate, are playing down at this level, and Armagh won the junior championship last year, and I thought it was absolute cert that you had to, if you won your championship, you were promoted. So how that situation has come about, but that's another story. They contested the Division 3 final, and in the league, Limerick were beaten in the semi-final by Wexford, a very, very strong Wexford team who should be playing in a level above in which they were playing.
Yeah,
we've discussed that in the past, and I'm annoyed over it.
Yeah, but I'm sure if the Limerick junior team would love to play last year's champions, or a team that should be in intermediate. They just seem like the sort of team that just want to play the best and hopefully beat the best. And look, we'll be looking.
We've got to play what is put in front of us, and I suppose there's no use in whinging about it. But I'm in a kind of a whinging mood today, Jack.
Yeah, well, I'll cut you off so before you get too into which mood, because we have the football podcast to come that'll go live around midday. We'll let Matt take a break. The Shelminator is wondering, Matt, do you ever take off the hat? I think you must have missed last week or 2 weeks ago when you had it off. Now, there's a fervency. Just a few more comments coming in. RT99. Apparently, Sportsfile sent on photos to Limerick showing that there was no forehead contact from Peter Casey. Clear vindication. And to finish off with the Shelminator, open and shut Casey. I think it's a nice way to finish. But many thanks to everyone for staying tuned. We probably ran a bit longer than we thought we would. Maybe my all-star team was probably not the wisest idea this Friday morning. But again, a huge thanks.
It was premature, Jack.
This premature, it'll probably be completely changed, but sure, what can you do about that? But a huge thanks to everyone that has messaged in or commented or given any sort of feedback. We love to hear any sort of feedback, whether it is negative or positive. We'll take it on the chin. Thanks for tuning in. Next week is the big one. It's All Ireland final week. We'll have individual All Ireland final previews. We'll have a tree talk as normal. We'll hopefully be looking forward to semi-finals for the lady footballers. Hopefully, realistically, it doesn't make a difference. The junior Camogie side will be into a knockout game, whether it is quarter or semi, we don't know. We'll have the first round of the club championship to look back on, and obviously then we'll have to touch on the All Ireland final, but there will be special previews for that. But
before we go off, Jack,
the
minors. The minor Camogie are into the All Ireland quarter final against Kilkenny.
Yeah. On
next Saturday week, they had a very good win over Clare. I was out at it last Sunday. Very, very useful looking Limerick minor team, who opted this year again to go up to level A, play at A level, and certainly had a very, very, very stern test from Clare, but overcame it. I came away from the game in Kilmallock with a lot of positives about Limerick Camogie, and there's no venue yet, but they will be playing. They will be playing Kilkenny in the quarter final.
Yeah, and that sure promises to be a brilliant game. But before I finish up here, I just want to say a best of luck to Danny Neville, a friend of mine, and obviously a clubmate, a real Palestine man, true and true. He's embarking for adventures new across the pond over to Abu Dhabi to go teaching for a while. The best of luck to Danny. We had a nice night a few nights ago. A share of us from Palestine. So, and I know you spoke at length about how much you admire Danny as a player. So I might like just finish there. He's been a great servant to Limerick for the last 10 or 15 years, and ever since he was born, he's been a Palestinian man, born and bred.
I'm very, very, very sad to see him go from a football point of view. I'm happy to see him going if it advances his career, because he certainly develops it, deserves it. Like a fine footballer, a fine individual, going to be a huge loss to Limerick. I can see how the loss is to Limerick. I can only imagine the loss he will be to Palestine. But whatever Danny turns his hand to, we wish him the very, 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 very best of luck, because he deserves it. He has given us so much pleasure over a good many years now, and I have no doubt that I hope that in the fullness of time that we will see Danny back again in the playing fields of Limerick, and possibly in the green of Limerick, that it's probably a temporary sojourn to the Middle East, or it is Abu Dhabi he's gone, isn't it?
Yeah, Abu Dhabi, yeah. Well, sure, look, we'll see. He's gone now anyway. I hope he enjoys it. He could be watching this in quarantine over there at the moment, but the best
he deserves he deserves any luck that comes his way.
Yeah, and the best luck to all the Limerick teams in action this weekend. And again, many thanks for everyone for staying tuned if you managed to make it this long. As I said, we'll be back later on for the football podcast. That will be pre-recorded, so you don't have to set your times or anything like that. You can get to it whenever you want. But Matt, the main thanks as always goes to you. I will see you in a while, but for now, thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jack.
The impression the game you get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the left brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.